What's going on, everybody? It's 5 o'clock Friday, and that must mean it's time for another Food for Thought Friday. Alright, so once again, I am looking at decision making. Specifically, how do we make the best decisions based on limited information? If you're new to this channel or a series and you don't know, my passion is in bridging the gap between behavioral science and everyday practical organizational application. Today, we're looking at the attribution of motive. Specifically, how do we attribute the ambiguous motives of others when they screw up? Now, there's an old saying, a proverb, if you will, that goes something like this. Never attribute to malice that which can adequately be explained by stupidity. Now, I love this idea for two reasons. Number one, the tone is slightly dark and incredibly cheeky, and at very best, or very least I should say, it's highly provocative. Number two, reason why I love this so much, is that in an odd sort of way, it really extends grace and charity to the offender. Okay? It extends grace and charity to the offender. Now, only tangentially related, Hannah Arendt, who was a victim of the atrocities committed in World War II in the concentration camps. There's this book, it's called The Portable Hannah Arendt. It's full of her writings. I highly recommend it. I did read it in my undergraduate degree in moral philosophy course. And I don't want you to write that off as, oh yeah, moral philosophy is all, woo-woo. It's got no real-life practical application. This is from somebody who lived through real-life practical application of her writing. And I want you to take that seriously. Pick it up, give it a read. You won't be disappointed. But what she says is that that evil is banal. And banality referring to something that is so lacking in originality that it appears as simply obvious or boring. Okay, so evil is banal, right? In other words, evil in humanity doesn't present itself with horns and a pitchfork, but rather, at least in the case illustrated by Arendt, in the form of banal simplicity. Okay, now, the maxim presented above certainly does not go to say that stupidity and evil are one and the same. Okay, but rather to assert that often the thoughtless outcomes of others are not the result of evil, but rather much more simply the result of banality. Okay, now Hannah Arendt says, well, banality, evil is banal, but that's a side point. Here's the question for you. How often do we observe the unfavorable actions of others and we quickly chalk it up to some moral failing? All right? Somebody said something or they did something that deeply hurt or offended you. Right? It must be that they're a terrible person. Somebody did something or they said something that undermined the trust that you have in them. We've all experienced that. Well, it must be that they're not trustworthy. Let me say that again. It must be that they are not worthy of your trust. Ouch. See, that's a big call. That's a big call. Somebody's not worthy. They're not trustworthy. That is a moral sentiment. That's a comment on their moral character. And so the advice presented in this maxim is to be generous with our attribution of motive. If the ambiguous grievance can be explained away by mere stupidity, this may be a more charitable than to explain it away by asserting that there is some fundamental moral defect. You see, because a momentary lapse of judgment, that's one thing. But a fundamental character flaw in terms of another person's character, that's quite another thing altogether. So let's get into this. Today I'm pulling from an article titled Hanlon's Razor, which was published in the August 2021 edition of Midwest Studies in Philosophy, and it was written by Nathan Ballantyne and Peter H. Dido. And somewhere here on the screen, I'm going to show you a screenshot of that first page of the essay. As always, I'll link it down below as well. Now, the authors of this paper sought to identify whether or not this advice was even any good, and if so, under which conditions should it be heeded. And as I work through this, I'm going to read just a few excerpts from the paper because I love the writing style so much, and I think that it might help to present the concept. And so, taken from the paper, quote, Hanlon's razor is meant to curb our tendency toward attributional extravagance, our proclivity to make sense of other people's bad behavior by moralizing it. End quote. So let's tease this apart slightly. What do we mean exactly by stupidity? Essentially, the maxim uses this term to refer to an epistemic defect, according to the authors. And we know that epistemology refers to the realm of knowledge, or the acquisition of knowledge, or knowing. So an epistemic defect is simply an error in our acquisition of knowledge, or a logical fallacy, or a bias, or other error in judgment. According to that definition, we all experience epistemic stupidity from time to time. And that's really what I like about this paper and this maxim is, hey, we've all been there. It's relatable, right? How does it go? To err is human. And I think it was Alexander Pope in the poem An Essay on Criticism that really said, to err is human. What is it? To err is human, to forgive is divine. I think that's how it goes. Okay. When another person commits such an atrocity, such an error, what we need to determine is whether that is whether this person is some immoral, defected monster of a specimen, or whether they're simply human, like the rest of us, right? So there you go. That's the food for thought for today. Pretty quick, pretty breezy, just down to the point. When somebody screws up, when they offend you, when they commit some hurt or harm against you, or when you're impacted by their hurt or lack of judgment, to err is human. To forgive is divine. And what I would challenge you and encourage you with is determine, is this the result of some moral defect? Are they a terrible specimen of a human being? Are they really that much of a monster? Should they never be trusted? Or was it just a moment of stupidity, right? As a species, we tend to over-attribute to character what we can just as easily attribute to human error. Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. So there we go. Hope that one helps. Follow me for more.